just got done watching You Season 4, Part 2, and this is going to be my non-spoiler review for the entire new season. Now, I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts, because Part 1 for me that premiered in February, I loved. And I say this as someone who loved, or not loved, but I really liked the first season of You. The second season kind of lost me, but the third season was kind of like my guilty pleasure. It was not a perfect show, but I quite enjoyed it still, and I thought it was the best season yet. But I thought, okay, we're starting to lose some steam. How are you going to change up everything leading into season 4? In Part 1, seeing that someone was stalking Joe instead of him stalking someone else, and changing all that and more into a murder mystery fascinated me. So I loved Part 1. I know it seems like a lot of people were kind of mixed on Part 1, and I can understand that, because I think one of the biggest things and one of my biggest criticisms of Part 1 was, we got to remember, Joe's a piece of shit. And that is my one thing that I've always said, is that it's hard to follow a character that is a piece of crap. I understand his past, I understand everything, but a lot of innocent people have either been blamed, gone guilty, or also just died because of him. Now, with that, talking about Part 2, and again, this is a non-spoiler review, so I will not be spoiling the new season. You are safe. Netflix has given me a long list of things that I'm not allowed to talk about, because I did get to see the entire season early, and I liked the back half. I didn't love it like I did the first part. There is a ton of twists and turns in here. More than any You seasons thus far. Like, there is probably, for every episode, there is a twist and turn that will either have your jaw drop, have you wanting to scream at the screen, and it continues that kind of aspect of what I feel about You, is that this is a very guilty pleasure show for me. And as much as I really did like Part 1, I have far more issues with Part 2. And I'll talk about those in a second. Some of those got fixed within the last 10 minutes of the season. But whatever they do next within this You world, because there are quite a few things left open, I will say, I'll leave it here. The next season has to be the last. It just pure out has to be the last, with the storylines that were left open at the end of this. And I don't have issues with that per se. I have no issues with that. But, you know, I'm rambling a little bit too much. I'm doing this one a little bit more off the cuff. What I do want to say, though, is thank you so much again for watching this. If you are new here, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, because I do cover movies and TV over here on a daily basis. I definitely, again, want to hear your guys' thoughts, so make sure to leave a comment down below if you hated the season, if you loved this season. I definitely want to hear that. I will be having a You ranking up tomorrow, where I'm going to rank all 4 seasons from worst to best. I hope you guys tune in for that, because I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that. With every review, I do like talking about the pros more than the cons, so let me start with my pros first. And going about, I have to say, Penn Badgley, this is hands down his best performance of the entire show. From season 1 to season 4, this is his best performance. And I say that because there's one twist or turn that happens, that the emotional turn that he has in here honestly pertains to some of the best monologues that he has ever given us yet in one of these shows, and honestly in almost any other thing that I've ever seen him star in. A lot of that has to be risen to that. Now, there's one thing I'm going to talk about, which Netflix has said I can talk about a little bit, is Tati Gabriella's character. Now, we kind of saw her in Part 1, and clearly it seems like her story was a little bit left open to what was going to be going on with that character, and how they brought her back for Part 2, at first, I didn't like all too much. I didn't really like where they were going with it, but as it went on, it really fascinated me, and I think her performance is incredible. I love what they did with her, and maybe not everyone will, but I truly did. Outside of both of them, I do have to give a shout out as well to Charlotte Ritchie, who plays Kate. She has been honestly such a stellar performance in here, and I've loved seeing where her character arc is at the start of the season to the very end of it, and I think it's actually one of the most fluid things throughout the entire show. For me, as a match with Joe, it seems like that is the perfect character to match along with Joe. I thought Love Quinn would have been, but it seems like Kate and him really work in harmony, and I love the development that they started to do between their characters. Really keep her as Phoebe is honestly like one of the big standouts of this entire season as well, and again, I was quite impressed with her. And of course, last but not least, if you've seen Part 1, I can definitely talk about this. Ed Speleers as Reese was perfect. I loved how they, I thought it was like, okay, this guy's probably going to be the killer, and he ended up being it, but it was a nice twist and turn there. But the twists and turns they continue to take with Reese as you learn more about him was far more interesting in Part 2. And that's where I go as far. I love the twists in You. I love when they give us more and more to chew on and marinate on. As part 2, I was surprised to see how much more they dove into that. And from the very first episode to the very last, there continues to be more twists and turns, and the subtlety of the creation of a lot of these was something that I actually really love, specifically in the production design. There's such small attention to detail stuff in part 2 that all revolves around and brings this season out to be one of the strongest in that nature. And again, the production design, the creation, that all really kept me engaged. The entire show, again, is one of those vocal shows. It's one of those water cooler discussions that you want to have, and you're going to continuously have that whether you love it or you hate it. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I love You so much, is because of how big of a guilty pleasure it can be for me and how engaged I can get with the show. Now let's go over to my mixed aspects, because like I mentioned at the start of this review, I wasn't completely impressed and like blown away like I was with the first part of this season. And I say that because it feels a little bit rushed. For the ending that they tried to get us to at the very end, it feels like they tried to throw a lot more story, and there are a ton of characters in the season, more than any other You season has ever had. And with that said, they throw a ton at you. It seems like certain stories are resolved a little bit too fast and too quickly, and then it seems like, oh, well, this should have been more important, then it ends up not being it. There's a lot of these things that just feel like pure coincidences and luck, and I know that's a lot of what Joe's life has been about, but those elements kind of didn't work well for me. The other mixed aspect I do want to say is that the show does fall back into its repetitive nature. I expected it because that is what Joe's character is, but certain elements of that just kind of made me roll my eyes and go, really? We're doing this again? Again, entertaining, so that's why it's not a full con for me, but I still did kind of go, really? We couldn't have thought another way around this? That's where I kind of move right into my cons, and the biggest con I have is that a lot of characters in here, specifically ones that we follow throughout this entire season, either disappear for the rest of the season or are just completely gone. And as you kind of touch on these characters, it's like they just rush through so many different storylines. It's like they really didn't focus on anyone else, and it really didn't leave a great feeling for me. Specifically, a lot of that kind of falters into the last 2 episodes, specifically as it tries to do another twist and a turn, which works. Happy to see, because it didn't leave this certain note for me, but I kind of just sat there going, okay, I guess that works. And it's very hard to talk about without spoilers, but I think You Season 4 Part 2 is still a good second half of the season. There's a lot of twists and turns that You season fans are going to absolutely expect, and I overall loved a lot of the performances in here. But I will say, whatever they do next with the open-ended story that they kind of have, Season 5 has to be the last season. Joe, and what I'm reminded of is that Joe is not a great guy. He is not a great guy no matter how hard he tries, and this second part kind of more established that, which I was happy to see, but at the same time it did feel a little bit repetitive. So overall, I'm mixed. I really liked this second half, but at the same time at points I was a little bit disappointed, and maybe that's just because I was a really big fan of part 1 and I wanted to see something else. This is kind of like my fix on Dexter, which I love the show Dexter and it did not end well, but I want more of that fix, and I'm glad that You was able to provide that for me. But there's a lot of twists and turns in here, some that are way too resolved way too fast, and others that I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea. In the end of the day, this is a fun show that you're going to have fun having conversations with your friends who also watch it, and that's why I'm going to give You Season 4 Part 2 a B. Again, a very fun second part of the season that does resolve a lot of questions, maybe a little bit too fast. But with that said, I'm definitely excited to hear your guys' thoughts on the season, so make sure to leave your thoughts down below. Down below can be spoilers, because the season is now out as this review is going up. If you guys want some spoiler discussions, let me know. Maybe I'll do some YouTube shorts on those. But other than that, guys, thank you so much again for watching this, and of course, until next time, stay class.